Welcome to all our viewers. My name is Darren. I'm also known as the White Hatter in the internet world. And our family, we have now presented to over 340,000 middle school and high school students from across Canada and the United States and thousands of parents on the issues surrounding social media safety and digital literacy. And one of the things that we've identified over the past couple of years are things to do with what I like to call the pornification or the hypersexualization of our tweens, teens, and even young adults in the digital world, and how some social media sites and even online games are specifically targeting our kids on this issue. And I am proud and privileged today to speak to an expert within the field. Today, I'm going to be speaking with Ginger Henderson. Ginger is a licensed therapist here in the Greater Victoria area that talks to parents and teens about this issue. She is a subject matter expert on this topic and has a passion about sharing this information with parents and kids. And today, we have the opportunity to speak to her here in the White Hatter studio. Welcome back to all our viewers. And Ginger, welcome. And it's a real privilege to have the opportunity to speak to you today and to share your message with the parents out there. And maybe you can share with our audience a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, thanks, Darren, and thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. So I'm a therapist here in Victoria. I have what's called the general practice. So I see clients from all various of needs and struggles, and I really love what I do. But you're right, one of my big passions is parenting and working with parents, teens, families, and couples, trying to help them navigate those crazy ages and stages that we all had to go through. So my kids are 20 and 18, and that also brings in that passion of parenting that I have.
Yeah, and you know what? That's what attracted you to us as a company is your passion for these kids, especially in the area of some of the things that are going on in social media right now. And you know, like you, I have a son, and if it wasn't for our kids, I mean, they've mentored me. I am who I am today because of my son.
Yeah.
And I think you would agree that the majority of our kids are doing super, uber cool
Excellent
stuff
things.
online, aren't
Yeah.
they?
Oh yeah, great stuff. I mean, they really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're really tech savvy, and they can, like you said, teach us what to do and how to do things. And there's just this portion of this safety factor that we as parents really need to know. But you're right, there's kids doing some really excellent things.
And let's get right into the discussion right now about what we're going to be sharing today to give the parents kind of some ideas about what's going on. And, you know, one of the things I've noticed over the past couple of years of presenting to these hundreds of thousands of students is how some of these sites are targeting our kids for what I like to call the pornification or the hypersexualization, and how some of these social media sites, even some of their music and even some of their online games that they're playing right now are targeting our kids on this issue. And maybe, can you help me maybe understand from your professional opinion why some of this is going on?
Yeah, I think number one, parents need to realize is that this is a business. So the pornography, video games, social media, all the apps, all of those things, those are businesses that are creating apps and all of that kind of stuff to hook your kids. They're trying to get your kids to get into them because then they make money. And so that's the difference that's sort of gone on throughout these years, is the more that these businesses are realizing how to hook our kids, the kids are getting hooked, the businesses are getting paid, and it's just exploding.
Yeah, you know, and I think a lot of parents don't understand that the porn industry online is a $95 billion a year industry, right? It's huge. And I think the porn industry has figured out that if they can hook our kids young enough with all this free content, as they get older, it sucks them in, it draws them in. So now, because it's becoming addictive, that they're now going to pay for this stuff. And that's where these companies are making all their money.
And the companies know that these kids are curious about sex. Yeah. They're curious about it, and that's normal.
Like, who wasn't?
Who wasn't curious, right? So, and if you are those parents that aren't really making it comfortable to ask questions to, then they turn to the internet and they type in just innocently sex or certain things that they've maybe heard, and then it links them to pornography. The pornography business gets paid, and your kids are learning about sex through pornography. That's the big danger.
And that's what I say, you know what? I say to parents that if you're leaving it up to the porn industry to talk to your kids about what healthy human sexuality is, you're planning for disaster. It's going to be horrendous. And that's why us parents need to take that primary role. But, you know, when I was a teen, when I was younger, I used to sneak my mom and, you know, or my dad's, you know, Playboys and Hustler magazines and kind of sneak them away. And, you know, I'm just fine. Now, some of my friends would say, he's not so fun, but I'm doing okay. And so what's the big deal about our kids watching and looking at porn online right now? Like I turned out okay watching, you know, Playboy and Hustler. Like, what's the big deal?
Jury's still out on if you're okay or not, just so you know.
I know.
But,
I know.
but what we need to realize is that there's a different rewiring that happens in the brain when we're seeing things online, when we're watching the videos and we're watching that on a consistent basis. And that's really what's going on is kids are watching it once, and then they're watching it twice, and then they're kind of going, I want to see that again. And then the brain's getting rewired. So the brain is now going, hey, remember that video we watched? We want to see that again. And so this rewiring is happening, and that's the danger. That's the danger that these kids are, and again, the kids don't realize that that's going to happen. So on the 10th time sneaking in a porn video or watching to see what's online, your child isn't able to go, this may cause an addictive like response. So as parents, you just need to realize that that's what could happen, and that's what's out there.
You know, one of the things my son really pushes at me because he's working on his master's degree is always look at the peer-reviewed research that's out there. And, you know, a lot of the research we're looking at with respect to online porn addiction, it looks like it's following the same neural pathways as alcohol and drug addiction is taking. Have you kind of...
Yeah, and then, you know, there's a lot of conflict when it comes to this in my profession because it's not in the DSM, which is called, you know, as you like to say, the Bible of diagnosis. So the DSM is where we have the criteria to diagnose people. It's not something that I do, but it's where the doctors and psychiatrists will go, okay, your reactions are causing you to have this sort of issue, right? So what we are seeing is, yeah, that rewiring I'm talking about is the same thing that happens when people do, you know, too much cocaine and become addicted, or gambling or any of that kind of stuff. It is the same rewiring that happens. You're right.
And, you know, we talked to quite a few psychologists and psychiatrists that we consult through our company, and they've all said, you know, although it's not in the DSM-5 today, they all saying in the next couple of years it's going to be there because
matches.
this is a real issue.
Yeah, it matches. If I have a client that's got, you know, a gambling addiction or a substance abuse addiction, it's the same rewiring that happens. And so I like to try to teach teens that too. So when I have teens that come into my office that are struggling with porn-like addictions, I go over the criteria of, say, a gambling addiction or substance abuse addiction, and I say, can you see how this matches, so that they understand what's actually happening in their brain. And I have sadly, a few teens that I am dealing with right now with porn-like addictions. And I think a lot of people think that it's a male-only issue. And right now, I have more female clients than male that are struggling with porn addiction.
You know, our family, we've now met 6 teens in this province, all under the age of 16, 4 boys and 2 girls, that are addicted to online porn. In fact, one of the boys, he's so addicted that he cannot have any kind of healthy human sexual interaction with a client or a partner, unless he's watching hardcore porn at the same time. Now, thank God, all 6 of those students are under care and under therapy right now, but it is an issue.
And then there's also so much shame that goes along with it, right? There's the shame once kids do start watching pornography and getting into that there's something wrong with them, and then they think that they don't have this sexual situations going on the same way as their peers do, and they don't really understand why. They don't get that, right?
You know, I'm a big believer in parents having open and honest discussions about healthy human sexuality. But what if my child doesn't want to talk about sex? Like, what do I do as a parent now? Because you know what? There's a lot of parents who've said that to me. So what do you suggest as a therapist that parents think about here?
Well, first of all, there's not a lot of kids out there who enjoy talking about sex with their parents. I mean, we can all remember how uncomfortable that was. But I always like to tell people that you want to start that communication as early as possible. You know, if you have a 2-year-old and you're starting to talk about their body parts and naming them appropriately and having all this conversation and talking about sex like it's a healthy thing and a healthy relationship, all of that kind of stuff early on, then at 12 or 13 or 14, when you start to have those really serious relationship-based sexual discussions, your kids aren't really as put off by it because they've heard about it all along.
You know, it's one thing to talk about it, but I also find that some parents are really uncomfortable about talking about sex. So what's your advice to parents who are uncomfortable about talking about this subject? Because the kids will pick up on that very quickly, right?
For sure. And you know what? I'd like to let everybody know that it's very common for people to be uncomfortable talking about sex. I get that a lot when I work with a lot of my couples, that they even have a hard time talking to each other about sex. So practice. You want to learn, first of all, you want to do your own research about sex, about how healthy sex should be, that kind of stuff. If you're somebody that doesn't really understand that yet, that's okay. But do your own research. And then I want you to start practicing talking about sex with your girlfriends, with your own parents, with your own, mom or that kind of stuff, and then start talking about it with your partner. make sure that you can have, if you have a partner, that you can start talking openly about it and practice that so that when you go to start talking to your kids, it's not abnormal for you.
Yeah, I kind of call it the 6P principle, right? Proper pre-planning prevents poor performance, right? Like it's like any other skill. If you're going to talk about a subject that you feel a little uncomfortable about, like doing an interview is a good
Right?
example.
Yeah.
Kind of practicing it before you do it is so important for parents, right?
And I do get that quite a bit. I get a lot of parents that will come in and say, I don't know how to talk to my kids about sex, or you know what, I've had abusive relationships all my life. How do I now talk to my child about having a healthy relationship?
Yeah.
Because I think it's important for us to talk about pornography, but there's also all of this other big underlying stuff going on that is bigger, not bigger, but it's sort of, it kind of is adjacent to the pornography issue that we're having.
For sure. What do you say to parents who say, you know what, I don't think my kid is interested in seeing naked people or sex, so why should I talk to them about healthy sexual relationships, let alone even talk to them about pornography? Like, why should I have to do that?
Yeah. I like to ask people, so at what age did you go up to your parents and say, I like breasts, or I like sex, or I'm really interested in sex? Nobody really goes up to their parents and says those sort of comments. So if you're looking for that, you're probably not going to find it.
Yeah, I'll say it to my friends, but not my parents, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you kind of want to just imagine what you were like at your child's age. Imagine the curiosity that you had. So it's not so much my child's not having sex, so I don't need to talk to them about sex, or I don't see, I don't see them looking at those images and liking it. It's not really about that. It's about knowing that your kids are going to be curious and you need to be their best resource. If you're not their best resource, they're going to go to an inappropriate resource.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it and you spoke about this earlier about the curiosity that our kids have. And if parents don't have the answers, or if the kids feel like the parents aren't comfortable about talking about some of these topics, where are they going to go? They're going to go online. Right? They're going to go online.
Yeah.
And some of that information online, as we all know, just is not the appropriate. And, all the research out there is showing us that parents are still the number one resource for our kids. They really are. So it's important that we as parents educate ourselves on this stuff.
I think it's important. I like to tell the parents I work with, you should be asking yourself every Sunday, have I been my child's best resource? Do I know what's going on in their world? Do I know what's trending? If you don't know that word, you should probably look it up as a parent, right? What is trending for my kids this week? Because it changes all the time. So if you don't know what's going on in the apps that they use, if you don't know what kind of things are out there in pornography, that kind of stuff, you're not going to know how to be your child's best resource. And if you have any questions about that, ask us. We'll tell you.
Yeah, and this is important because what we're talking about today is not pornography centric, right? It applies to a lot of different things in parenting, about talking to our kids about all kinds of things. Isn't that right?
Oh, yeah. It needs to be, as you know, Darren, my number one thing I like to talk about is self-worth, right? So if you're talking to your kids about self-worth, again, at the youngest age as possible, you need to be able to watch for those warning signs. If your kids are having issues with anxiety, issues with their self-esteem, that kind of stuff, that's going to make them even a bigger target to quietly look online for sexual advice, for looking on pornography, for what sex should look like, being targeted online on the social media apps that they're using, looking up inappropriate stuff like that. If their self-worth isn't in check, they're a target. And as parents, we need to be aware of those things too. So you're right, it's not just about pornography, it's about a big thing, a big umbrella of stuff.
Yeah, I hope the audience is understanding why we love Ginger so much and then why we brought her into the fold. I love video games, and so do our kids. My son loves them as well. And I've heard that some games that they're playing and very popular contain context that is very suggestive or even sexually inappropriate. Is this true?
It really is. And you know what? I was amazing in my time for the Super Mario Brothers, I have to say. So I understand, right? Like, yeah, totally. Totally, yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I understand. Yes, video games can be great, and the way that they've done them nowadays, the way that they've worked in all the cool things that kids can do, there's some really great stuff in video games. I agree. But yes, there's actually things called porn bots, which is a program that goes in, it will sneak into Xbox and PlayStation and allow your child to communicate with people, which now they do. Everything's sort of online, right? And they'll communicate with people that they think they may know or they think that they're safe. But these porn bots actually go in and try to hook them into a porn link. So when they click on it, it takes them into pornography. That's one thing. Also, we also have games like, what was that, God of War? Is that what we were talking about? God of War, Grand Theft Auto, Haro or whatever it's called, right? So there's all these video games that these kids are playing that there's one scene where the person shoots a woman, and then with his gun to her head, has sex with her.
Yeah,
And these kids are playing it. There's another scene where, the man's getting oral sex in the car, and as the player, you're making that happen. Parents, you need to be aware that this is what's going on in these video games that these kids are playing.
I just read a book from a person who was fairly high within the social media development field, and they just retired, and they wrote this book, and they talked about how industry right now is hiring those same people who design slot machines in Las Vegas to keep you playing those slot machines, and the industry calls it making apps sticky, right? The scientific or the neuroscience world calls it making them addictive. And this is so important to understand, is that they are specifically being designed, like you say, to affect the teenage brain to make them very addictive.
Because the teenage brain is malleable. It's not already formed. It's not already sort of where it's going to be. So it's so easy to make those brains more attached and do that rewiring than it is for our old brain.
And I know in your presentation you talk about the happy drug, what we call dopamine, and how these games really set off the dopamine, and how dopamine over an extended period of time causes the addiction.
You do pay attention.
I do. So why are these games so dangerous to our kids then? Like, what makes them, I hear this a lot, right? Oh, it's only a game. We know the difference between fantasy and reality. We know it's not real. Well, why are they still dangerous?
Again, we've got these kids with these underdeveloped brains. So then they're watching this kind of information, right? They're watching it and they're learning it. Again, is that what sex is supposed to look like? Like that one game where the guy's in a brothel, and the more women he has sex with at the same time, the more coins he gets. He gets rewarded. So then the kids, I know that they're smart. These kids they're smart. They're trying their best, but they don't always know that that's not real. They don't always know that that's not okay. That it's not okay to subjectify women that way and subjectify men that way. So there's a wide umbrella as to why these video games. It's not so much that they're all not okay, but we just as parents need to research them and know which ones are dangerous, and also understand, again, how those porn bots can get into our kids' consoles and become dangerous for them to be able to click on pornography sites or click on talking to somebody that is harmful.
And let's be clear, we're talking about kids, tweens, and teens. We're not talking about adults, right, who can understand.
Again, they have those
right?
developed brains.
Yeah.
They know, they have that cause and effect. If I watch this pornography too much, I may become addicted, says the adult brain. Right? If I watch this video game, I now know that it's still not okay to go and subjectify women that way. But if we're trying to teach our kids about sex and healthy relationships and just how to treat people, some of these video games are just not okay.
So here I am as a parent, and I've learned that my child has been watching porn or playing inappropriate games. How do I react? Like, what do I do now that all of a sudden, oh my God, little Bobby or little Jeannie's, playing some of these games or going to some of these sites that you're talking about? Like, what do I do as a parent now?
Well, there's a few things. So if you're talking about, you walk in and you see that your kids have this video game and you didn't realize they had the video game, then you want to take those, make sure if they're the ones that are really dangerous that we're talking about, you want to take them away. And then you want to have a conversation with your kids. You know what? I didn't realize that the content in this video game is so damaging. And this is what I think about the damage that it's causing to your brain. And this is what my opinion is. And what is your opinion? What do you think about the game? I'm not saying if they say, oh, the game's great, you give them back the game, but you want to hear their opinion, right? Now, if you're talking about somebody, your kid comes to you and says, I sent a nude picture, Mom, or Dad, I've been watching a lot of pornography, or you guys, I'm in trouble, I've done something online. If you're asking that kind of question, the first thing I always say is you want to thank your child. And this may sound crazy, but you want to thank them. Thank you for coming to me. Thank you for trusting me with what's going on for you. Let's sit down, let's grab some tea or grab some ice cream or something like that, and let's really talk about this. You want to make it not this big overreaction of how could you, I can't believe you did this. You want to say to your kids, okay, let's figure this out. Let's figure this out together. And yes, there may be a consequence at the end of it, but to me, I always say, instead of a consequence, you want to use this as a learning opportunity as to what is happening for your kids and how to protect them from it happening again. And you want to kind of collaborate with them on this, so it's not you talking at them, it's them going, okay, so this is what happened, this is where I went wrong, and this is how I'm not going to do it again.
Some of the feedback we've heard from kids is that they'll always test the waters first with the parents, right?
Always.
Before they come forward to let parent know something's going on, they're going to test those waters and see how the parent's going to act, or more importantly, overreact. And what the kids have told me is that if the parent starts to overreact, they withdraw. They don't fully disclose. And I think disclosure is that first step in getting the kids that they the help that they need.
Exactly, yeah. So if you, as a parent, if your kid sort of drops a little bomb, right? Like I did
Or a
this
big
wrong,
bomb.
or yeah, I did this wrong, or I did that wrong, and you fly off the handle. I can't believe you did this. You know better than that. Any of those kinds of things. The next time something big happens, or even bigger happens, they're not going to want to turn to you because they're going to think, oh, my parents are just going to overreact.
And really good point. I think that's one that parents really need to understand. Earlier I said we've met 16s through our presentation, all under the age of 16, who are addicted to online porn and are now in counseling for it. And what are some of the signs that parents should be aware of specific to this issue to let you know that maybe your kids are finding themselves into a little bit of challenges, some problems with this issue?
Yeah, there's quite a few things I like parents to be watching for at all times in regards to watching pornography, but also in regards to all the other sort of dangers that we've talked about today. Number one, self-worth, like I say, looking for that lack of self-worth. So negative body image, negative image just about themselves, that need for validation online, right? I'm sure all of you parents have heard, I got this many likes, or nobody liked this. That's pretty normal in today's teens, unfortunately, but is this a hyper awareness about it? They're getting a high when they get that like, or they're getting a low when they don't get the likes. Those kinds of things is what you want to watch for. And then, of course, anytime we have a kid that is having interests in hobbies, and then all of a sudden those start to fade away, they're recluse into their rooms, they're irritable, that kind of stuff. And again, if your kids are uncomfortable talking about sex, you want to talk about it more. As making them comfortable. You don't want to bombard them with sexual conversation, but you want to kind of make sure that it starts to become normal for them.
And what's interesting to me, what you just shared there applies to if they're being digitally aggressed online, bullying. You kind of see those same things, right?
Exactly.
And, as the parent, you're your kid's best antenna, right? You know your child best. And I think you nailed it when you said if you're looking that your kid is all of a sudden doing things that they normally haven't done, then what has changed? And maybe we parents need to raise our antenna a little bit higher, right?
And have the conversation.
Yeah.
Number one thing I say to parents, talk, but talk with your child, not at them. You want to make sure that they're learning to collaborate with you, that they're learning to trust you, all of that kind of stuff. And that starts and grows, right? It's not just one day you go in, have you taken a nude? Have you watched pornography?
Yeah, and as if any kid's going to go, yeah, I have, Mom, right? Like they don't do that,
no.
right?
So it's conversation. And hey, I heard about Snapchat, and I heard that people are sending nude photos about that. What do you think about that? Why do you think somebody would send a nude photo? What's your opinion on that? Great conversation to have.
Yeah, and you talk about in your presentation something that you call the SOS, the sense of self. And that's a part of that conversation, right? And what is it? Why is it so important?
So sense of self, your SOS, as I like to call it, because it should set off a bit of alarm bells if you're kind of wondering what that is your perception of yourself. What do you think about yourself? What do you believe that you are, or your abilities, all of that kind of stuff? Again, it all comes into that self-worth, but your sense of self is developed at a really young age. So what you heard about yourself, those kids that are, oh, she's shy, as the kid's hiding behind the leg, they now think I'm shy, and that begins to develop who they are, right? So what do your kids believe about themselves?
Right. So as a parent, I'm doing everything right, but my child is being pressured by friends to watch porn. Now what do? I mean, a good example, our kids will go over for sleepovers or campovers, and they've got a really good SOS, sense of self, but now all of a sudden they find themselves surrounded by peers that are maybe pressuring them to do things that they don't want to do. So what are some of your suggestions for those parents out there that are experiencing that?
Yeah, again, if you have that great communication, your kids will then talk to you about the pressures they may have. So that's, again, what I always kind of go back to. But you want to make sure that you talk about that beforehand with your kids. You know what? There's this stuff online called pornography. Some people are really, that's how they learn about sex and that kind of stuff. And that's not really the way that we as a family want you to learn about sex. So let's talk about this first. Again, if you have those conversations before they go over for those sleepovers, they're going to be less likely, their antennas are going to be up about them, but you want to give them an out. right? You want to say to them, how would you handle this if this came up at a sleepover? And see what they say first, because sometimes they surprise you with the abilities that they do have.
Again, it's that proper pre-planning that I spoke about.
Yeah, you want to say to them, hey, what would you do if? Right? And really get those conversations going. What would you do if is a number one question to ask your kids on all topics, right?
Yeah, not just surrounding pornography, but surrounding everything, all the challenges that we're
Well,
facing.
in the social media apps, right?
Yeah.
Like all the Snapchat and the Instagrams and all that kind of stuff. What would you do if you saw all of your friends out at a gathering and you weren't invited? What would you do? How would that feel? How would you handle it? Would you talk to me? What could we do if that happened to you? What if you saw something inappropriate on Instagram and it really upset you? Do you know you can tell me about that, and I'm not going to make you close your Instagram down? I just want to hear what's going on for you. Like, these are great conversations to try.
And getting parents to understand that if your child does come to you over an important topic that maybe they've been targeted on, that the first thing you don't do is take their phones away from them, right? Like, I find that a lot of kids, that's one of the reasons why they're afraid to come forward to parents, because parents, the first thing that they like to do to get rid of the problem, take the phone away, right? And like it or not, these phones have become like a third appendage to our kids,
know,
right? So that's important, right?
Yeah, and I mean, there is a time and a place to remove technology, but what I like to say to them is say, we're going to pause with this technology for a moment. We're just going to take it away until we can figure out how we're going to keep you safe and how we're going to keep you safe emotionally, physically, all of that kind of stuff. Let's just press pause. And so there's a ton of resources, as we know, and I like to share with parents about certain things like kids' Wi-Fi, net sanity, all that kind of stuff that we can place on technology. And sometimes that's all they need is just, we're going to press pause. We're going to put this monitoring on here until we can see that you're making healthy choices or people aren't harming you, that kind of stuff. But kind of letting your kids know, if something happens online, just so you know, I'm not going to quickly take away your technology. We're going to have a conversation about it, because you want to prep kids to be safe to talk to you.
I think one of the things that you said in your presentation, which I just loved, is you said to your daughter, no matter how bad it gets, if that means I have to run away to Mexico with you to keep you safe, that's what we're going to do first. We're not going to look at any kind of consequences to actions. We're looking at how do we keep you safe first. And that's the prime directive for parents, right?
Right. Yeah. I adopted a no matter what policy with my kids at a really young age, and thankfully my kids weren't really bombarded with as much social media as kids today are, because again, they're old. But yes, you're right. I said to both my kids, if you ever do something that you feel like, oh, I screwed up and there's no way out of this, there's always a way out. If we have to run to Mexico, we'll run to Mexico is the joke in the family, right? But what kids need to know is that if a situation arises, as your parents, we got you. We'll figure this out, because we've all seen online and we've all seen in the news of these horrible situations where kids have taken their own life because of mistakes or choices or things that have happened to them online. And you know what the number one thing they have in common? They've lost hope. They've lost hope. They think there's no way out. So as parents, and I don't blame parents for any time that a child gets into those situations or feels hopeless, but if you can hear this message today, give your child hope that you will help them in any situation without judgment, with no shame, and there'll be an out.
Yeah, you know what? We say that in all our presentations to the kids. We say to them, if you're in trouble and you need help and you don't know who to turn to, you can turn to us. We will help you. We'll never judge you. We're there to help you. And if I can't help you, I know somebody who can, like yourself.
Yeah,
I mean, a good example is, as you know, we forwarded a young man who connected with us, who was having a big challenge over what was going on online sexually. And we forwarded him through me to you. And as a result of that, that young man got the help that he needed, right? Which is really cool. So really cool.
How lucky are we?
Very lucky. Last question I have for you. I've seen sexting as early as grade 4, and some statistics in Canada say that 1 in 4 of our kids in high schools are sexting right now. How do we as parents talk to our kids about this very important issue?
Yeah. Again, you want to let your kids know that you know what's out there, that you know what's going on, and again, asking their opinion. Like I said before, okay, so little Johnny, I've heard of Snapchat, or I'm on Snapchat, even better, because you want to be your kids' friends online. Kids are sending each other nude pictures, and they're doing this. Do you know why they're doing this? What do you think? Pause, listen, hear them. You want to really hear what's going on for them, because if you just say to them, I heard that there's kids sexting, and it's wrong, and if you do that, you're going to be in trouble. Again, they're not going to want to talk to you about it. So ask them what they think. Ask them what they think, and then you want to ask them, so how would you get out of this situation if somebody sent you a nude? Right? Because that's really important, especially with the laws in Canada and all that. We need to know that. What would you do if somebody sent you a nude? And how can you be sure that you won't send somebody nude? You want to ask your kids the questions, why wouldn't you send somebody that you really care about a nude picture? Why wouldn't you? And hear what they say to you.
Yeah, and I think what's really important for parents to understand is that the message of abstinence doesn't work. It didn't work when we were kids and when our parents were kids. What works is educating, right? And approaching this topic more from a harm reduction standpoint rather than an abstinence standpoint. And that's something that I think you do quite effectively in the presentation. Ginger, you know what? I want to thank you for taking the time to come in and sharing some of your thoughts with the parents out there. And you know what, viewers, I think you can understand why we've brought Ginger on board right now as a member of the White Hatter team. I mean, she just does an excellent job in sharing what she knows in the subject area with parents and even youth. And if you want more information on how you can connect with Ginger professionally through what she does through her practice, Ginger, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so you can go onto my website, which is www.counsellorvictoria.ca. You can look through there, and also on the White Hatter webpage, there's my bio and a link to contact information there.
And for those parents and groups out there that would like Ginger to come in to do the presentation on this topic, you can connect with us directly at www.personalprotectionsystems.ca or give us a call. All the information is on our website about what we do, how to connect with us, and how to book Ginger. So again, Ginger, I want to thank you. You were awesome, absolutely awesome. Yeah. And we as a company are so happy to have Ginger on board. For now, I hope the audience really enjoyed what it is we had to share with you, and stay tuned with what it is that we're doing as a company, because we're going to be doing a lot more of these types of interviews, informational sessions for you out there, because you are what matters. As Ginger says, you want to be your child's
best parent,
not their
best friend.
It's so important within the digital world. So for now, from myself, from Brandon, who's working all the magic behind the scenes, and as well as Ginger, thank you everybody for having a look and listening to what it is we had to share with you. Have a great day.